Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day today. What I wanted to cover today was a quite a big topic, to be honest, but it's how cold email deliverability could be, affecting your pipeline and stopping having a consistent lead flow through cold email. Because, for example, you could have a lot of emails set up, sending 1,000 emails a day, and in theory that should be able to book you quite a lot of meetings. But if your emails aren't delivering, going to spam, then you're effectively just kind of having a wasted set up there of, it can be quite expensive to send that many emails. So you want to make sure that your deliverability is on point to then be able to be successful. And what I mentioned by it being a big topic is just that there's a lot of nuances in email deliverability, especially, the cold email side, because that's where really the deliverability is more of a big factor than if you were just sending out warm emails to people you already knew. And there's so many different factors that you kind of have to have everything as optimized as possible to continue seeing long-term success with this. So I've kind of separated it into 3 points of the process that I think are most important, and just kind of the main factors that would affect deliverability here, just to talk about. I want to try and make this video not too long, so I'm going to try and cover everything as briefly as possible with enough information that you can understand what I'm talking about, and then more specific things that you need to do for the setup. Can look at probably more like specific videos, example like the DNS stuff, but we'll get into that shortly. So the first thing I just wanted to kind of address as well was what deliverability actually means and the difference between deliverability and delivery. So as you can see on the screen now, what I've said is deliverability is the number of emails that you've sent that actually land in the recipient's inbox. So for example, if I was to send, I don't know, a construction company an email to try and win their business, and the CEO of the construction company sees it in his inbox, that means that email has delivered properly. It's in their inbox, so we have strong deliverability. But delivery is just one step backwards, which is that the email has sent into their server, but it hasn't landed in their inbox. So obviously, there's those other sub inboxes like spam or junk, whatever you want to call it. And that would essentially be the delivery. So the delivery is the first step, making sure the email can actually send to the recipient server, and then deliverability is then kind of the extra level of security to then allow it to be seen as an email that the person would want to read and go into their main inbox. So both of them are important, but if you have high delivery, you might not always have high deliverability for reasons that we'll go into here. So the first, before you even start worrying about are my emails delivering, you actually want to set up the inboxes properly. So I haven't got too many points on this, just because it is all kind of well documented out, and it is simple, but it can be hard to do correctly. But as long as you know the right information, as I said, it is a simple process setting up email accounts, making sure they're warmed up properly. It's just obviously there's a lot of things to keep in mind, so it's easy to make a mistake, but once you know everything, it's fine. So first thing is really, let's say you're doing it from scratch completely yourself, first thing you need to do is obviously buy domains. And the main kind of points I just have here on the domains is that it's probably best to have .com domains. You can obviously have like .info, .org, .co, and they are cheaper, but just if you want to kind of have that strong brand, .com ones, it might not make the most massive difference in someone's head, but just seeing that .com, it does first of all help with that kind of back-end deliverability, because it's just a higher level kind of domain, and then also just it looks a bit more professional because that's what everyone usually has. I'm not sure if many people would actually say, oh, he's got a .co, it's saved in $2 a year, but it just kind of, I think, appears a bit stronger if you have .com. And then the main providers, you can buy from multiple providers, but it's probably best to get one that is like a big name, like GoDaddy or Squarespace. There's plenty of other ones, but it's sometimes good to have a bit of a diversified domains as well. So you want 10 domains, maybe buy 5 from GoDaddy, 5 from Squarespace, or 2 from GoDaddy, 5 from Squarespace, and 3 from like Namecheap, for example. So there's plenty of providers, and they're all quite similar in price. or you can get it set up for you on instantly. For example, if you're sending emails on instantly, you can buy ones and then they do it for you, which might be more kind of beneficial just because then you don't have to worry about a lot of this stuff with like the DNS settings. But if you want to do it from scratch, you buy them from here. And then you want to set the inboxes up and probably with Outlook or Gmail, just because they're the kind of, they're the big servers. If you're buying it for a cheaper price off some private SMTP server, then it might not be as reliable and it might just not really get matched by then when you're sending into a big Outlook or Gmail server that's going out to, leads, then it might be more likely to not end up in the inbox properly. And the other thing to note as well for the domains is, for example, our company is acquired.com, about the queue. I wouldn't want to send cold emails with this domain. I would want to send it with similar domains. For example, go acquired.com. So very similar, but just add in a few extra kind of buzzwords at the front or at the end. So like teamacquired.com, meetacquired.com, goacquired.com, just so that you can still tell who the kind of company is, but it just isn't that domain. Even if you, I don't know, did want to add a Q into it, or just write acquired business.com or something like that, just so it's not the main domain there. Is just best practices, because then if you did use this email for cold outreach, or this domain, sorry, for cold outreach, and then it got banned, or you had a really bad reputation on it, then it's just going to completely mess up that email for internal stuff. So if I'm using that for internal, all my messages to clients, to potential customers, etc., is just going to go straight to spam, and then that's not going to look good. So we don't want to use this. Just going to get rid of that. Get rid of there as well. So yeah, that's kind of the main stuff at the domain level. And then as we go further into the inboxes, it's best to have an actual name for the email account. So let's say we bought the goacquired.com domain. I wouldn't want to call it support@goacquired.com or mail or team. I'd want to actually have a name. I want to have my name or someone else's name if you don't want to use yours. But probably just is best to use yours, because then if you're the business owner or CEO or whatever your title is, you're kind of represented with that brand. So if people are getting a message from you, it probably seems more like, oh, I might, maybe you won't know who you are, but it's just a more recognizable name once they see the business. They see, oh, James is the CEO or whatever it is. So use a real name, your name probably ideally, and then don't have any characters in the actual kind of user name. That's what they call it, the email. So for example, this is an email. This is obviously the username, this is the domain. So you wouldn't want to have any characters. You want, for example, we're making variations, because you can make, I usually recommend 2 to 3 actual email accounts per domain. So if you wanted 10 email accounts, you could buy 5 domains and then have 2 on each. But you obviously need variations. So you could do James acquired. Let's do go acquired to be in line with what I've been saying earlier. So we've got James, that's 1, and then we need another one. And what you can do is do like James Lathos, for example. What you wouldn't want to do is, that's fine, but you can do like James.Lathos. What I meant to say, what you couldn't do, apologies, is actually in the domain itself, you wouldn't want to have any characters. I'm just going to move that. Got a bit confused myself there. So you want to have no characters actually in the domain. So, for example, you wouldn't want to do go-acquired.com. You'd rather have it just be all one word, technically, or one, letter, not letter. You know what I mean? Just no dashes in between words, because that can obviously create more types of domains, but it's just not worth doing. So yeah, that is all good. And then we've got sending volume. So once these inboxes are set up, we ideally probably want to send maybe 15 to 30 emails from this inbox per day. Cold emails, I mean, I'll go into the actual warm-up emails down below a little bit. But in terms of how many cold emails we want to send per day per account, I usually recommend starting on about 15 once we've finished the initial warm-up phase, and then each week maybe increment by 5 until we go up to 30. I wouldn't really go above 30. 20 to 25 is probably the ideal range just to keep it going for longer. But if you start at 15, then a week later do 20, week later do 25, week later do 30, you should be good. And then that kind of evens out the volume if you were just consistently sending 25. So yeah, that's a good number there. And then the last thing is just the DNS setting. So once you've created the domains and the inboxes, I think, on the domain level, you need to have all of these different types of DNS settings set up. You can do this while you're kind of creating the inboxes as well. That's fine, but it's just a bunch of different specific records that basically need to be added. If you're using somewhere like Outlook or Gmail, they do kind of help you with doing it, but there are a lot of videos out there that go over the specific setup. And as I said, if you're buying them already kind of warmed up from the provider or through Instantly, not warmed up, sorry, but just where they do this out for you, you don't really have to worry about this. It's just if you want to spend the time doing it. But I'd usually recommend just buying them from Instantly anyway, because then it is around the same price and it saves you doing hours of this if you've never done it before and you're going to get it wrong maybe a few times. So probably is just best to use a provider there for the technical setup. And then going into the actual warm-up process, we want to have a minimum of 2 weeks, so 14 days to warm up the email accounts once they've been added onto the sending platforms, so Instantly, Smart Lead, etc. You want 14 days minimum to warm up, and it's also something that you just kind of have ongoing. So even if you've been sending on those email accounts cold emails for a month, you still want to have that warm up going on in the background. So yeah, minimum 2 weeks, and then we can probably start sending cold emails. But when we get to the settings of the warm up, so you want to probably send maybe around 20 warm up emails per day. So then that kind of adds up together with the up to 30 cold emails you're sending. So then you're sending about 50 emails a day per account total, which is an okay number to do. I wouldn't go any higher. So I wouldn't want to do any more cold emails, and I wouldn't want to send any more warm up emails. But 20 is good. And I'd recommend maybe an increase of 5 every day. So maybe you just start on the first day of warm up, have it set to 5, and then there's usually an option where you can add an increase. So then I just do an increase of 5 every day up to 20. So then the second day it's doing 10, and then 15, and then it goes up to 20 and just does 20 consistently. And then that just maybe allows it to seem a little bit more natural. If you're just starting an email account, you probably would only send a couple emails the first day, and then as you're kind of using that email more, it's going to be sending more. And then the other kind of technical number as well is it just asks you what reply rate you want. Recommend probably a 20 to 30% reply rate. It usually does say that 20 or 30 is the recommended reply rate for the actual warm-up emails. So basically what it is it's kind of imitating real email communications. That's what the warm-up process is. You can do it manually, I think, but obviously if you're using it on a platform like Instantly, it's doing it for you. Essentially what it's doing is just sending kind of emails that look like they'll be just kind of normal communications emails going back and forth, and then you just want to have 20 to 30% of them actually reply back. So that's how it works. You just set that number and then it does it for you. And then as I mentioned, we just want to keep that warm-up active forever. And then once you've done 2 weeks of warm-ups, you're allowed to start the actual cold email campaigns. If you really want to go safe, maybe do 3 weeks of warm-up just so that you're on the safer side. The longer the better, really, because what it's doing at the end of the day is just adding a reputation to your email accounts. So every email account has a reputation, and usually by default it starts at 100, or technically it starts at 0, but then once you're doing warm-ups, it basically pings it straight up to about 100, and then over time, if you're constantly sending cold emails, going to spam, it's just going to drop. And what we want to do is keep it at around 100, maybe 90%, because it is going to drop a little bit, and not every account is going to stay at 100 forever. But to keep it as high as possible, these are the things that we want to do. So the first thing that I put at the top, and I think this is just a common pitfall that a lot of people have, is they want to track their open rates or maybe their click rates. So we're sending out a campaign, and we want to know how many people are actually opening our messages. That's what most people in theory are going to want to do. But what opening and click rate tracking actually does is it adds like a kind of a link / attachment to your emails, which over time is just going to get picked up by the server that or it's sending like a strange link inside the email. And then that's kind of what I put here as well. We don't want any links. So this is a link, and it's just going to over time kind of drop that deliverability because links are usually associated with like spam email. So we don't want to have any links in there. And these are links. So we don't want to track open rate or click rate. I know they can be helpful, but in reality, actually, open rate can be inaccurate because sometimes the servers themselves open your emails for you before they even get properly put into the inbox, just to kind of check through, make sure there's no spam in there. And if Gmail servers are opening your emails for you, and then that's counting as an open, it's not accurate because they haven't actually, the recipient hasn't opened it, the server has. So we don't really get much value from this anyway, so we don't want to have this. I'm just going to put here, no, none of that. And then there's another option when you're actually setting up a campaign where it asks about provider matching, which basically means that Gmail messages go to Gmail servers and Outlook goes to Outlook. It's probably best to tick that as well, just increases that deliverability a little bit and keeps it going for longer. Next thing is, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the links and attachments, is we just want to send in plain text only. So when you are writing copy into Smartlead or Instantly or whatever provider you're using to send the emails, it does usually have an option where it says like clean HTML or like plain text only. If you hit that, I think there's two options usually to do it. For example, in Smartlead, when I'm actually writing the script, there's a button in the corner that just says remove HTML. So I do that. And then in the actual settings, it says, do you want to send emails as plain text only? I tick that and make sure, that I've maybe clicked that remove HTML a few times, just because if there is some that you don't realize, you don't really want it, and that kind of goes in line with the no links and attachments. For example, this is obviously a hyperlink. If I did that, it removes the link, doesn't keep the domain number. I'm just going to go back some of that. Go on to that later. But essentially, if your message was just this and it has a hyperlink in it, that's going to, same as I mentioned here, just cause your deliverability to drop because it's being picked up by that server as having a link, which is going to be associated with spam. We don't want any hyperlinks. We don't really want any links at all, really. Maybe in a follow-up, if we want to send over some sort of document, then we could have a link to it, but not in the first message at all. We don't want any links or attachments. So, for example, if you wanted to send a document, don't attach it in your first emails or your second emails, really. I'd probably rather have links in there than attachments, just because that's another thing that's going to be kind of brought up as a spam. If you're sending a message to someone you've never sent before and it has an attachment in it, the providers are probably going to think, oh, maybe this is a harmful attachment. And then you're going to either get blocked or go to spam. Next thing is subject lines. So this one is a bit more about the actual copywriting, but the subject line is that first thing of an email that someone sees. So this is kind of on a personal level and a technical level, but if you have a subject line that was, for example, saying free demo, click here, and then exclamation marks, that first of all is probably going to get picked up by the server as this looks spammy. It looks like they're trying to get people to open it no matter what, and it might be a scam. So that's probably going to increase your chances of going to the spam folder. And if it, for example, does go to the inbox, if I see a message that says, please open this exclamation mark or free exclamation mark, I'm going to kind of think that's just someone trying to sell to me or make me click it as much as possible. Maybe some people aren't as savvy with that, but I feel like most people probably would see that and be like, I'm not going to open this. And then they're probably going to put it into spam themselves anyway. And if you get put into spam by someone actually actively seeing you in the inbox and then saying you're spam, that's also going to harm your deliverability, even if it does deliver properly first. If you're then kind of getting rejections, no, we don't want that. So we want to have good subject lines that are quite simple and probably more kind of a little bit vague, really. If you had one, let's say you were, I don't know, trying to sell, something to do with AI, you could just put AI as the subject line. Or if it was, for example, a solution that saves costs or increases productivity, you could probably just put productivity or your team or your team's productivity. So stuff like that just keeps it kind of vague and might make people a bit more curious to open it. That's probably the subject line I'd rather use. Next thing goes kind of in line with that as well is just not having spam words in the actual copy. So similar kind of things that you wouldn't want in the subject line, you wouldn't really want in the copy itself, like free. There's just certain words that get buzzed. And what I've done here is I've just got a link to a tool called Mail Meteor. And you can put your copy into here and it comes up and show you what's done. So, for example, kind of things like ASAP, guaranteed 5%, financial, if I did put like cost, money, free, opportunity, these kind of words come up. And, you know, if your script needs the word like opportunity in it or something like that, or please, that's fine. But if you have loads of these, it's just going to be more likely to be associated with spam. For example, here's a dear friend. You'd rather have the actual name. So if you can tag like a first name into it, do that, because otherwise it just kind of looks generic. So you want to try and reduce that as much as possible. And this obviously is a really good tool to help you make sure that you're not having a really kind of spammy looking message. So I always use this, put my copy into here and it will show you. So that's a very good tool. And I'll probably just link that in the description as well so that you can check it out yourself. But it's called Mail Meteor Spam Checker. Next thing relating to the copy as well is syntax. So I've just put an example of it here. If you usually start your message with hey name or hey James, whoever you're going out to, and you're sending 1,000 emails a day, then all of those 1,000 emails are going to say hey James. And this is obviously quite a small example of it, but if you use syntax, usually it looks like this, curly brackets, and then like a line in between each one. Then it just means that a third of those messages are now going to say, hey, James. A third of them are going to say, hi, James. A third of them are going to say, hello, James. And you can do that for probably half the copy. There's probably a lot of words in there. For example, if you use the word industry, you could syntax that with like sector, space, market, and then that just increases more potential variations of the message. So if half your message is syntax, or syntax as much as possible, even like the ending line, like best regards, best wishes, thanks, regards, cheers, then that gives you a few more options. And it just means not every single message, but each message is going to look different. Maybe a few of them kind of look the same, but if you're using a different first name, different, everything, then it just kind of means that it looks like you're sending more natural emails rather than every single email you've sent in a week is exactly the same. So syntax is very helpful, especially if you're doing high volume. Next thing is bounces. So there's two types of bounces. One of them is called a soft bounce, and the other one is a hard bounce. A soft bounce is not really something that would affect deliverability too much, and you can't really help it. That would be, for example, if someone's inbox is full, you sent them a message, and then it can't send because their inbox is full. Because essentially what a bounce is when the message can't be sent, so it just comes back and it doesn't deliver at all. Doesn't, hits the server and gets denied. So that soft bounce is something that's kind of out of our hands. As I said, if their inbox is full, we can't help that. It's not really going to affect your reputation or your deliverability at all. So I wouldn't really worry about that too much. We can't help those. But a hard bounce is when it's been picked up by the server and something that we've sent or something to do with our reputation is bad and it gets denied. So for example, if it's full of spam words, it might get denied. If it has loads of links, it might get denied. If our sender reputation, we're in a blacklist, it's probably going to get denied. And a lot of the stuff to do with reputation just kind of hinges on what I've mentioned above. So if we haven't warmed up properly, if we have loads of links, it's just over time going to be more likely that our reputation is going to go below 100% down to, if it's 60% reputation, that's pretty much a ruined email. You want it to be at least kind of 80 to 100%, ideally 95 to 100, because that imitates it being a healthy email and a fresh email. So yeah, we want to make sure that we're not having any hard bounces where we're getting picked up and being sent away. The other thing as well that hard bounce could be is that if the email that we're sending to doesn't exist anymore. For example, I used to have an email that was James HCL Marketing. That's what our company used to be called. Changed it to acquired. So now that email is inactive because we've cancelled the email accounts. So if someone tried to reach out to me and sent it to that email, it's going to probably hard bounce or just come back with a response saying, I'm no longer with the company. And that is kind of not a good sign of who you're reaching out to, because the spam, the big email servers are going to realize that you're just sending out to everyone, even if they're not active or not. What you can do to prevent that is just by verifying your email list. So if you had a list of 5,000 emails, put it into, I'm just going to write it down here. I'm going to just copy the link. This one you can verify the spreadsheet. I think you get probably about 10,000 verifications for about $30 to $40, and the more you get, like more you bulk buy, it's cheaper. So I think like 50,000 verifications is more like $60. So obviously it's 5 times more for like about double. So this is a really good one to use. You can use other. I think there's like one called Zero Bounce. There's plenty of verifiers to use. Million is probably just most consistent for me. And it does allow you to do it, for example, using Instantly. Instantly has its own credits you can buy to verify the emails, but it's just more expensive. I'm not sure exactly on the price, but it is more expensive than just using a dedicated verifier. So every list you build, just put it into here, and then only use the good emails that come up. They're like in green, safe emails, good emails, same thing. And then there's catch-all emails as well, which you can use in theory, but you have to do an extra level of verification. I don't really have time to explain all of that today, but just for best practices, use the safe or the good ones that are in green. It's usually about a third to a half of the list. Catch-all, you probably want to re-verify it with this other thing where basically it tests sending the emails, and if they do respond or if it goes through, then they're good. But then that's an even more expensive tool, and you have to use a separate verifier. So only use that if it's that perfect list for everyone in that list you want to target, and then all the people that are invalid and stuff you can skip. Next thing is the blacklist check. So essentially this is, as I mentioned, it's kind of the culmination of all of these. If you go into a blacklist, then your emails are probably all going to just go to spam or get rejected by the server. So one thing that's just worth doing is I use MX Toolbox blacklist check, and maybe just once a month or once a week check to see if any of your domains are in a blacklist, because they might be, you might not know. So I'll just put that there, and all of these links I'll probably just drop in the description. And then the last thing is just an ongoing thing as well, is to check your reply rates to your email campaigns. That's something you're going to be checking anyway, just to check your performance. But if you've got really low reply rates, it could mean that the copy itself is quite bad. But if you have a low reply rate, for every single campaign, and all the scripts are different, then it's probably going to be an indicator that your deliverability is bad. And especially because we're not tracking open rates, we want to rely on reply rate. So an ideal reply rate is above 1%, but really you'd want to have 2 to 5% reply rate. 5% reply rate is very good. If you're sending 1,000 emails a day and getting, I think 5% would be what, about 50 replies. My math's working. 50 replies a day is pretty good going for sending 1,000 emails a day. And then if a quarter of those people are interested, then you're getting 10 potential leads a day, which is pretty good. So and then even if it was 2%, obviously it's half, but then that's still kind of showing it's healthy. If you're getting 0.5% reply rate every week, then it probably is going to be that you've got bad deliverability, especially if your positive reply rate is quite high. Then it means that people are interested, it's just not getting seen. Whereas obviously if you had like a 5% reply rate and then no positives, you probably need to work on your script. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. I think I've probably spent more time talking than I was planning on doing, but I wanted to cover everything on this video and on this list, at least in a bit of detail, just to kind of show how and what it means, how it works, what it means. Obviously some of the stuff like the DNS settings, there are other videos out there on how to do that setup if you don't know how to do it, but my recommendation would be just to probably use that Instantly if you're using Instantly, and buy their emails, not the pre-warmed ones, the actual setup ones, so you still need that 2 week to warm up. But yeah, all of this stuff is very important. If you need all of them to kind of be correct to really have that long-term deliverability, constantly landing in the inbox every time. So yeah, I hope this was of value, guys, and if you want to ask any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll put all of this stuff in the description. So yeah, take care, see ya.